Now, for our Focus Africa segment today, we turn to a development with global reach. The United States has officially exited the World Health Organization after nearly 8 decades of membership. This follows a process that began with an executive order in January 2025 under President Donald Trump and formally took effect in early 2026. The U.S. was historically the largest single contributor to the WHO, accounting for roughly 18% of its budget, and played a central role in funding disease surveillance, vaccine coordination, outbreak response, and emergency health programs around the world. Critics warn that this withdrawal not only weakens global cooperation, but may also disrupt the ability of countries, including many in Africa, to respond to health emergencies, track infectious disease trends, and deliver critical immunization and maternal health services.
With us now to unpack what this means for global health security and Africa's public health system is Alexander Van Roogen, who is a global affairs policy analyst. Good morning, Alexander. Good to have you here. And
good morning.
I also have to welcome Isaac Einstein, who is always joining you each time we come to you. And I mean the painting behind you. It's such a bold one. But thank you for joining us, Alexander. Alexander, please help us understand why the U.S. exit from the WHO matters so much, not just from the global health perspective, but specifically for African countries.
Well, the entire process that's going on right now with President Trump, you've heard him recently at his speech at Davos, and you've heard his rhetoric in terms of the rest of the globe and changing American policy to American first. When it applies to the WHO in Africa, it's not that he's abandoned that America has abandoned Africa in terms of support. He's just looking at the institution as being prone to serve self-interest and not align with America First policies. He's basically adopting the Department of Government efficiency handbook to say adapt, shrink, or die. If America's going to supply money, let's make sure that it aligns with American values, and that it's not wasteful, it's not mismanaged, it's not corrupt. That's the message they're sending.
Right.
So you see this also with the new formed Board of Peace in Gaza. He's taking the mandates and the operations of the UN that he feels have been mismanaged and inefficient, and he's restructuring a parallel universe to what the UN did. And I think he's going to target, specific applications where mismanagement is resulted in just nothingness. It hasn't solved the problem. And he wants to show the world that he can pursue peace and pursue more efficiency.
Right.
I don't think he's going to abandon Africa. In fact, there's a one-on-one policy that's been negotiated with Nigeria in particular now, because America, as you know, is working with Nigeria on their security problems. Nigeria is taking in America as an ally. They're probably going to build a new base for military operations in Nigeria.
And I think the second shoe just dropped there. At what price? Why is security the one thing that he is more focused on? Health is more. It's equally as important now, isn't it? I'm wondering, Alexander.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, if you look at the 66 global organizations Trump is backing out of, global warming, he doesn't believe in it. He thinks it's a farce. He's maintained the key UN objectives, which are international calibration for marine, for aerial, for UNICEF is staying intact. He's not abandoning everything. He's basically walking away from what he calls woke agendas that he doesn't that the party in America, the Republican Party, doesn't agree with. But he's not walking away from everything.
Okay.
And he prefer to deal with countries on a one-on-one basis rather in generalities. And he's going to deal and focus on countries that are aligned with the U.S. That's happening right now in Nigeria. So I don't think if there's a fear,
so nothing goes for nothing, and I'm wondering
immediate shutdown.
So with what you've just said, then that means there must be specific interest in Nigeria. What is that specific interest? Is something that I've been trying to put my finger on. If his focus is on security and trying to help Nigeria be secure, you've just mentioned the word base. But to what end and why? We understand the Greenland instance, why he wants it. It's for the benefit of securing America and keeping that out of the hands of either the Chinese or Russia. Why the specific interest in Nigeria when it comes to security and not health?
Well, I didn't say it wasn't with health. I just said he wants to deal with countries on a one-on-one basis that are aligned with America. So, for example, you have countries that are diametrically opposed to America. They're off the list. I can give you the list in Africa right now that includes Botswana, Cameroon, Eswatini, Ethiopia, Ivory Coast, Kenya, Lesotho, Liberia, Malawi, Mozambique, Nigeria, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Uganda, and Zambia. They've all cut deals one-on-one with America.
All right. Interesting. I'll have further questions on that. I'm just going to do a research on all of those countries now and find out exactly what ties them together. Queen.
Well, Alexander, the experts were talking about disease surveillance and outbreak preparedness, that it could weaken without the U.S. participation. But of course, now you said that the U.S. is having individual conversations with countries. Do you suggest or do you believe that these conversations that the U.S. is having with different countries would turn out to be good in a short period of time before any pandemic or any warning system happens?
That's of course a global concern, and Trump just feels the WHO has not been aligned with American interests. In fact, since inception, they've never had an American chief executive officer running the WHO. That's an issue Trump has in terms of management. In terms of hands-on financial management, as you've indicated earlier, the Americans have contributed about 18% of the operating budget of the WHO. The Europeans contribute totally, as the EU, about 33%. First of all, this doesn't mean that the WHO is collapsing. It's a wake-up call. It's get organized, be efficient, stop wasting money. That's the message he's sending. He didn't say America wouldn't work with the WHO, but he feels they can do certain things better and more efficiently working one-on-one with various countries. And those that don't align themselves with America, they're off the list. He's very blunt about it. I have to admit his bedside manner is not always what people would appreciate. He's thrown the usual diplomacy out the window. He's very blunt about it.
Right.
And it instills fear in people. But I think we've got to let common sense prevail. If there's something that affects the world from a pandemic perspective, I think America's got a lot to lose. So for America to abandon it would be insane. They're restructuring things. They're reorganizing.
Right.
They're making it efficient. The biggest fear is probably with corrupt officials that have been pocketing money from the WHO because they're going to be exposed.
So Alexander, you've talked about how this is just a plan to make sure that the WHO is accountable as to how they are spending money and what they're doing for the world in general. So would you say that, the way Trump is handling this and his intention behind this is something people should look at based on the way he's handling other situations, whether it's insecurity or the Venezuelan situation or the Greenland or Nigeria? What's your take on that?
Well, let's not compare the Western Hemisphere with Africa. Africa is a distinct and separate entity. I have my theories of what the future of Africa has to bear. I mean, I have a concern that if World War III is going to be fought, it'll be fought in Africa. That's a real concern Africans have to have. I mean, right now you've got 41 conflicts going on in Africa, the most anywhere in the world. Okay, and a lot of them are proxy wars from the majors, and primarily over resources in Africa. Okay, I would hope that humanitarian objectives will be adhered to, and Africa will be respected for its sovereignty as well. What's going on in Nigeria, you mentioned earlier, there seems to always be a fear of sovereignty being invaded and control. I have no fears that American objectives are of a colonial type management intent here. I think America wants to take advantage of relationships in Africa. But Trump has advocated trade over aid, meaning if we're going to go and spend money and donate money and give benefits to Africa, we want to know we're getting benefits in return. It's called business, okay? And if people find that offensive, let them go out and find other alternatives that aren't the same. Trump's agenda dictates that aid equates with support that never brings Africa out of the hole. And trade doesn't do that. But trade has to be fair on both sides, especially for the Africans. If they're going to cut a deal, let it not be one-sided, but if you cut a deal, make it be honest. We all know institutionalized corruption is a problem. It tends to convolute things with aid, whereas if it's a direct one-on-one arrangement with America, I think you're going to find they've adopted this Department of Government Efficiency type playbook where it's not as one-sided.
Yeah.
It's efficient,
Okay.
and they're going to expose the corruption more and more. I think that's it's more effective use of money that is being put up.
Alexander, I've done a little bit of research and I found what links these countries that you mentioned together, but I'm going to save that as my last question since we're still talking about the U.S. exit and from WHO and how it affects Africa. Nigeria in particular, this question here. Since the WHO is instrumental when it comes to vaccination campaigns, maternal and child health programs, and also health workers training, I'm wondering, with this brings budget shortfalls. No budget, that means things are going to have to change. Services, for instance. So for Africa now, which services are most likely to change? What are the risks here with these budget cuts?
Well, I mean, if you look at what part of the UN that Trump has attacked in terms of not supporting its diversity and inclusion, women's empowerment, gender modifications, basically woke agendas in terms of security, in terms of UNICEF, in terms of refugee displacement, those commitments are all in place with America. These are things that affect America directly. Trump's attacking inefficient divisions of the UN and other NGOs in what U.S. was providing funds for in USAID being shut down. and don't align with the American agenda. Nigeria is working with America. They're working on security right now. There's I think a very good relationship forming here.
Yeah, and that's the interesting bit. He's working with Nigeria on security. He's working with other countries, like the ones you've mentioned, that have maritime security strategic interests that he has interest in counterterrorism, migration control. We've seen that with his conversations with certain African leaders. But it also seems that he bypasses the AU each time he's having these leader-to-leader conversations. And I'm wondering what you think about his how he sees the AU, or what his thoughts are on the AU. Why bypass the AU to speak to these leaders directly? Doesn't that kind of like tell us his respect for the African Union, just like we've seen him exit the WHO?
Well, he's treating the AU much like he treats the UN.
Exactly.
He feels they're plagued with bureaucracy. They have self-serving interests. They don't get things done. Look at the AU Security Alliance, or with ECOWAS in fixing the problems in Nigeria. There's America's sent $7.8 billion since 2014 to have a rapid response team in ECOWAS to deal with insurgency, banditry, religious fundamentalists.
Okay.
All they can agree is not to agree. It's like dealing with a church committee. They just don't get anything done.
So this is obvious, and it seems that the AU hasn't noticed, or maybe they have, but they're saying nothing. And I'm wondering what that does for the collective African unity. Is this exposing us as not a united continent?
It's exposing Africa as just not being unified, not being able to govern itself because of those varied interests, self-interest. I mean, here's the best example.
Okay.
ECOWAS doesn't recognize countries that have had coups. You've had 3 major coups on your borders: Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. All of those countries left their, the coups were done because of lack of protection of their citizens against insurgency. They've kicked out the French because the French were there to protect them, allegedly, as former colonialists, and they weren't doing their job either. So they have a common enemy with Nigeria. Nigeria has a problem with porous borders, and you've got insurgents crossing that border, whether it's Boko Haram or the Islamic groups that are using Islam as a kind of a false robe for banditry. Okay, when you have a common enemy, why don't you work together to solve the problem? But they can't, because they can't acknowledge them because of their removal from ECOWAS.
Right.
You know, this is right out of the Art of War. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Right.
Work together, solve the problem. You know, bridge the political gaps that may be there.
Right. While we're talking about unity, some U.S. states like California has opted to join or remain with the WHO. What's your take on that?
Well, America is dissected with Democrats and Republicans right now. They have their own battles.
So I guess they're not as united as they claim. If Africa is not united, then America itself as a country is not united as well.
Well, do not as I do as I say. You know,
exactly.
And let he is without guilt cast the first stone, as the Bible says.
Catch-22.
Well, but the thing is, Trump does lead the country. He makes the decisions on behalf of the country. We can all, criticize the internal workings that are going on in America, but those secular workings are really democracy in play. Whereas Africa has its own set of problems and things to deal with, and you can't compare the two. Africa is very unique. And anyone that comes in and tries to dictate terms in Africa without understanding the demographics of the regions, the people, the culture, shouldn't be doing that job. You know, that they're going to be culturally disrespectful, and that's not going to help anyone. It's going to have people take offense. You know, look at Nigeria. You're about 54% Muslim, 45% Christian. Why do they keep playing the broken record of Christian genocide? Stop it. Don't make it secular. You have banditry targeting Nigerians, Muslims, and Christians. Fix the problem. Stop arguing over whether it's religious or not. The bottom line is that doesn't make the bandits go away. You've got moderate Muslim leaders that have been killed, more so than Christian missionaries. It's a problem.
Well, it's
Let's
not our
let's
narrative,
fix the problem.
Alexander. It's not our narrative, Alexander. It's a narrative that was designed for us by the U.S. president himself. But we must...
I agree, but I think Nigerians are intelligent. They can see through the rhetoric.
Indeed
they know
we
they
are.
have a problem.
Indeed we are. And we can see exactly what's happening here with these bilateral relationships and conversations happening with the different countries. We can pick and we know exactly what the details are behind the curtains. Alexander, thank you very much for joining us to have this conversation here. And we will always, as usual, come back to you when it has to do with geopolitics and the interest of Africa inside of these many happenings around the world. Thank you very much, Alexander.
Always happy to help. Thank you.
Yes, indeed.